Hi everyone! Guess what day it is?
It's Saturday.
Woo! I'm so excited.
I know, me too.
I look forward to every Saturday with you.
I look forward to getting away from academics for a bit and just talking about, just escaping life in general.
Right.
And talking about film.
Okay, Nick, I have a question.
Here we go.
Right
off
do
the
you
bat.
think that academics ruins, like, looking at a movie?
In what? What do you mean?
Because, like,
are
you
you
always
talking
get
about
those
like
jokes that's like, you're
film?
always analyzing, and you can't just watch a movie and it ruins it. But I don't know if I agree. What are your thoughts?
No, I can't. It doesn't, because I think that there's so many movies and films that I've watched in the past, that now I continually rewatch, and I see them in a completely different lens. I see them in a completely different way, and I think that's what makes it so much fun. I think last time I was alluding to that it's one of the fun things about being a film scholar is that, when you're growing up and you're watching film, but you have no means of making film or being involved. It's kind of like your escape, like a comic book for some people and other things for others. But when film's your hobby, and you really have no way to branch out on that hobby just because of your home life and the means you have and such, it becomes this thing where it's kind of like a happy place for you, and it's a relaxed place. But you start to see things, with semiotics and theory and such, things that you don't know, but you're recognizing a pattern. And I talk to our Rob about this often, is that I found it so interesting that you have a film that you love, and then you go back and you rewatch it, and you can just pull it apart in so many ways. So I would absolutely disagree. I think it makes it even more exciting.
Because I think in a lot of ways it enhances the viewing of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because then you feel like you understand it on a different level.
Yeah, and I mean, often sometimes you kind of catch yourself in films. Now, in the day and age, I know I didn't do it much when I was younger, but now in the time of technology that we're in, you can if the film kind of hits a lull or a little part, or maybe a montage or something, you'll start messing with your phone or something like that, and then you find out you actually miss a lot of stuff. And so now it's when you get to see film in this different way, as soon as you start it, it's going to be this brand new, fresh experience, but you're much more attuned and astute as to what's going on, and that's why I just love rediscovering things in film. But then even more so, I love hearing what folks have to say about film that I've never seen. And then I get to go and see it, and I get it through that lens, so I feel like I get a head start on the film when you get that chance, rather than just kind of going into it and not having heard anyone analyze it, talk about it, provide theory toward it. Those are usually the ones you get out of and you're like, oh, it was a good film. But if you get something academic out of it, and you learn how to find these things in film, it's a completely different experience. So I would say that no matter what standpoint from it, all that you're going to do taking a analytical approach to film is you're just going to learn more. So I don't see how it would ever take away. And people who say that, they're just jealous and stupid because they don't know film.
True.
So fuck them.
Fair.
There you go.
Valid. And close the book.
Choo
But something I've really loved about our film program, which I know it sounds like Nick and I are probably literally sponsored by the film program, but I promise you that is not the case. But one thing I love about it is it really emphasizes European directors and other directors from other countries outside the United States, as well as the United States film, because I think that's so important to understanding the form too. Because you get so many, like D.W. Griffith, you get D.W. Griffith just looking at it from an American lens, being like, I discovered everything about storytelling in film, and that's not true.
It's not. It started with Albert Einstein. It never started with him. The first discovery was with Einstein. I just know, D.W. Griffiths, because at the time of the popularity, and now it's just because of how horribly racist and disgusting the film is. But it's one of those ones that the one thing you have to sit through it for, as we know, is because of the choreography, the fight scenes. Those shots had never been captured like that before, so it was completely new. But every other piece of the film is just racist as all hell.
Yeah, and also you get color filters, and he's like, wow, color filters. But then you have Count of Dr. Caligari, and you have so many European films doing that before, and it's just a whole thing. But I think if you broaden your horizons, you have a better understanding of the whole. And also, I think film is a really great way for everyone to connect, regardless of where they're from.
Yeah, and even what you bring up with Griffiths, I mean, that still happens, in this day. I mean, you have modern filmmakers that deny that what European influence they had in the past. I mean, I know that there was a piece where they talked about Tim Burton and how he used a lot of Caligari, specifically like if you look at the hallway in Beetlejuice compared to the hallway in Caligari's mental institution, they're extremely similar, but then even more so what we alluded to last time. We were talking about guys like James Cameron with Titanic, who it was a carbon copy.
Teflon.
Yeah, it was a carbon copy of a German film. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of directors that like to say no, that's from me, or no, it came from here, or it came from inside. But it's like, no, just admit you had some influence from
honestly,
Europe.
Having influence doesn't mean you're a bad filmmaker. Also,
No.
and also with Tim Burton, that really annoys me because the film program he went to starts with Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. So I'm like, were you sick that one day?
Yeah, and it's funny.
Tim?
There's like a whole video on YouTube that shows. It's like I remember we watched it in class actually.
Oh, really?
A professor brought it up, and it does a compare and contrast of old European films with current Tim Burton films, and it's just back and forth, side by side, and you can see, and that's where I'd seen that Beetlejuice hallway scene. But yeah, they just everybody wants to be on their own thing, whereas I would think if you can take something that creative, that incredible from Europe, and you can bring it into modern film, and really make that impact, then give credit where credit's due.
Well, and also I think part of this kerfuffle, I guess, that comes up with American filmmakers being scared to say that they have inspiration from Europe for some reason. I think some of it comes from this kind of look at old Hollywood, because honestly, American cinema was born through immigrants. Immigrants were all the old people who started the old studios, and 20th Century Fox, all of those studios, they were all founded and run by immigrants, and they're all immigrant directors, X, Y, and Z. So I mean, the European influence on American film is rooted in the very beginning foundational elements of American film. And so to deny that is just it's just denying film history, and it's also but you get a resurgence of filmmakers Scorsese, Coppola, all these filmmakers that came out of the film school generation, wanting to define American cinema, but still being very respectful about where their influences came from, which I think is just a testament to how good filmmakers they are, because it's not a bad thing to be influenced by.
No, not.
You're beyond your borders, you know what I mean?
Not at all, because I mean, if you do it, it also forces people to look back and discover, if these folks can make a film now, and if they have influence from something from the past, it's nice to hear them tell you about it and admit to it, because most likely you may have not seen this piece from the past, and it may, when they talk about it and you understand it, you can go back and check the piece out yourself, and it may inspire something in you artistically, or you may be able to come to better grips with what you saw in the modern state, and have a better comprehension and understanding.
Well, it helps you process through, if you see other people, processing through film and X, Y, and Z, it helps you process through it too.
Yeah, and I just think that these individuals that don't want to say that they got it from somewhere continue to deny. I mean, all they're doing is hurting film historically. They're being counterproductive as part of a film appreciation, film history, understanding the roots and where it came from. They're just perpetuating this counterproductivity to these films, because you're not letting people learn. You kind of just want to set the benchmark at you and move forward. But if you want to do well anywhere in this industry, whether you're behind the camera, whether you're teaching or anything, you have got to have this solid basis. You have to have a foundational structure, or else you're just going to get laughed at.
And also, understanding your history is so important.
Yes.
It's just so significant, and I don't know why. I feel like it's I feel like it's a more recent thing, but then again, I only have reference for recent because, I'm not an old person, you know what I mean?
I on the other hand,
You're not that old, oh my god. But anyway, Nick, just kidding. I feel like people, I don't know, with film being new and with film or not film being new, but film being a relatively new art form, and accessibility increasing drastically in the last, 10 or so years. A lot of people want to be like, no, I invented the wheel. No, I invented the wheel. And it's just frustrating.
Well, it's like, like you said, the modern piece brings something massive into it, mainly because, back in the day, we were at the mercy of, we talked about it in the past, Blockbuster video stores, and not just video stores, but also, catalogs and things like that. And it was really, and getting your hands on European film was extremely difficult. But now in the technical day and age that we're in, I mean, you can go on YouTube and watch an absolute mass of black and white films. Like if you want to watch Buster Keaton, if you want to watch Charlie Chaplin, if you want to watch Caligari, it's all on there. And I mean, just because a lot of these films, the companies that had rights to them, the bloodlines that had rights to them are dead. They're long gone. So, and I think that's also what kind of makes it easier for some of the more modern filmmakers to deny their association, because there's really no one to argue it other than academics and the film itself, because there's no other human attachment directly to that film, whether it be company, family, bloodlines, anything like that. That's totally escaped. So it's kind of like the person saying, well, nobody's on this mountain, and everybody may have forgotten about who was on top of it, so maybe I can just go up there and start it.
Well, because that's kind of James Cameron's.
Well, it's the easy way. It's the easy way, and that's just how it is. I think if anyone can ever find, we're in a society where it's the easiest way to money. Hard work is abandoned. There's no such thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are people that work really hard and keep doing things and getting things done, but and they do earn their way. But I would think often more times than not, specifically when it comes to entertainment, for entertainment purposes for Hollywood and such like that, the easiest and the fastest, the simplest money you can make is the money that you're going to go try and make. That's what people do, regardless, with a total abandonment of honor, respect, dignity for anything involved. But it's just like, no, if somebody, I mean, a director like Cameron, he's put together some pretty amazing stuff. And the guy's got money for lifetimes. He spends his time deep sea diving. He has his own ship, his own. I mean, the guy's got money beyond belief. So I mean, he doesn't give a shit if people are saying like, oh, you have to say that about Titanic. Oh darn, he doesn't care, because like I said, with these, oftentimes when people's when their bank accounts start to go up and up, there's a lot of morals and ethics that are abandoned, and so. But I mean, that's their choice.
Down there. They're living their karma, but I don't know.
You never. I mean,
you never know.
You never know.
Because it's not you're not in charge of checking it. It's whatever.
I think the best thing to do is just kind of like keep to yourself, stick to your guns, and then when you get into, if for some reason you get into making that kind of money, just stay true to yourself. Right. Don't submit.
Start a podcast and expose everyone.
Yeah, do that. Pull a Mark Maron. I love Mark Maron, but he's one of my favorite people. And I've been watching this. I watch the Maron show all the time, but I've been watching this other show on Netflix called Glow, The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling.
Oh yeah.
It's got Mark Maron in it. He's really? The director.
I love that.
And I just love it, because every time that somebody tries to get him or somebody to sell out, for the system, he's up in arms. He's like, fuck that, fuck them. We're going to do it the way that we want. And that's how we're going to do it, because you got to feel good about it.
Okay.
He's so anti-establishment that I think that's why I love it, because I'm the same way. I'm bitter when it comes to the establishment.
I mean, understandably, Nick, I feel like you've had a lot of experience with the establishment.
In and out. Yeah, they are what they are. But yeah, I just think just swinging back around, it's just, it is one of those things, when stuff... When certain stuff dies and passes away, and there's no one there no longer to, argue for it, people will jump in and take any advantage that they can to forward themselves, mostly just to get more zeros on the check, which is what they do, and I think that's why it's a good thing that we're talking about the European craft, today, because and it's a very small selection of films that we have. It's nothing crazy, but I think that they're just ones that we've really seen that make an impact, and they could stand up against American films. A lot of them are way better than American films. I think a lot of these pave the way for a lot of folks here in the States to really like try and, you know, copy, mimic, dictate, go after, you know, because some of the new direction that we get, you know, from like Von Trier, from guys like, you know, Guy Ritchie, you know, we get an Irishman, Troy Duffy, that gives us good films, you know, I mean, Frank Oz, you know, some of the funnier stuff, Martin McDonagh, you know, we get these people from outside that, I mean, they give things that, I think some of these make Hollywood jealous. I know that because I think about what was going on in Hollywood at the time of some of these films, and I know that if I was somebody in Hollywood, I would just been like, whoa,
well,
what are we doing
like
wrong?
Super close to Hollywood too. Like when we get into like films, like, you know, when we get into some of the films, some of them will have direct connections to Hollywood, which is super interesting. But.
Yeah, because I know for some, like, I know when you start getting into like the 90s and the 2000s, early 2000s, kind of like late 90s, early 2000s, you really get into some stuff that if I were in Hollywood, I would panic.
Yeah.
Like I would just kind of go, holy shit, we better get our stuff together, because what they're cutting loose is exceptional, and people are really starting to look at it. So yeah, it ignites it. But
and I think in a lot of ways European cinema is more open to expression, you know. There's not, I don't know, I'm not an expert on European cinema, but there doesn't seem to be as crazy of a hold on what can and can't be on screen. So I feel like it's more honest.
It's because here in the States, anybody can get sensitive or butthurt about anything.
That's fair.
And the second that they do, there's going to be a gathering, a push, some sort of fucking support, you know, as soon as somebody's butthurt about something. You know, like I know one of the films we'll talk about, the ASPCA would have lost their fucking mind if we would have shown it here in the States.
Oh my God, which one?
The Lobster.
Oh, there's another one on here too.
Yeah.
The ASPCA.
And that's what I'm saying. They would have just been like, oh my, you know, people would have been up in arms about it. And that's when, that's the times that you can sit there and say, listen, it's just a movie.
Also, like,
people can't respond. Like when you're critiquing shit and then somebody goes, it's just a movie. Yeah, you can smack them in the mouth.
Oh my God,
but on the other side of it though, when people are arguing like, I can't believe that, listen, it's just a movie. Nobody really slaughtered that. Oh, give me a fucking break, you know?
100%.
Because I mean, it happened like, there's a lot of, when we talk about martial arts, you know, there's a lot of stuff in martial arts films that couldn't make it to the States just because ASPCA would lose their fucking mind.
And you know this right now.
Yeah.
So spoiler alert, the lobster's on the list. What animal are you turning into if you don't get a date, Nick?
Let me think about it, and we'll approach it at the Lobster.
Right, okay,
because I kind of know.
I need to know.
I know what I would want. I think I have a pretty good idea.
I love that. So let's
get into it. It's kind of like a tie,
it.
but we can definitely talk, you know, dystopian future animals.
I want to talk what kind of animal I turn into if I don't get a date.
I mean, do you have like a? Oh, okay.
Wait.
I mean, when does the 45 days start?
If they've already started, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Just kidding. If they already started, I'm turning into an animal tomorrow.
I am a herd of animals. I'm a fucking.
Oh my God.
I'm out to pasture with all my other lives.
I'm out to pasture everyone.
Eating grass and fucking shitting and doing what I do.
I love that.
So yeah, I want to.
Okay, yes.
I want to jump into it, but
Any last words about Europe and America?
Last episode, you know, we did discuss Cleo from 5 to 7, but you plugged it in here again.
Yes, because I wasn't sure where I wanted to talk about it too.
Do you know now?
I do think that
because if you do,
right?
Because this is what I wanted to open it up with. It usually it's always, you know, you're always putting the pressure on me right away. You're like, okay, we had our chat, Nick. Now get your shit together and lead it off. So then I was looking at this and I'm just like, did you do this to me on purpose?
No.
I was like, screw you, I'm turning the tables, you know. So
you're like, look here, and I was just planning this. I've been practicing this in the mirror for a week.
No, just a few days.
Okay. So Cleo from 5 to 7.
This is why I want to know why. I want to hear why.
Yes.
You brought this back on, and I'll just kind of jump on your coattails when I can.
I think it's excellent. I kind of just put it on here, and then I forgot to remove it later. But I'm going to go ahead and segue, because, you know, Cleo from 5 to 7 is excellent. Check out our last episode for us to talk about it more in depth. But I want to pitch another Agnes Varda film, because I think Agnes Varda is such a great European director.
That was my next piece, because I know we didn't get enough time to really talk about Agnes Varda in particular, because we were talking a little more about Leni Riefenstahl. I know we went into depth with Riefenstahl.
Oh, yeah.
And so what I was hoping for is maybe you could kind of hit that with Agnes Varda.
Yes, of course.
For the listener, because I know they're eager.
So, are you eager out there?
They're sweaty with it.
Are you sweaty?
Oh, God.
Are you sweaty? Come date me so I don't turn into an animal. Just kidding. So yeah, Agnes Varda, she comes from
That's a great pickup line, right? I'm gonna use that
Can you?
whenever I meet some. Yeah, I know my future girlfriend's walking around on campus
And
somewhere.
she'll know
I'll find
the
her,
movie.
and I'll just be like, I'm sorry, we need to get together or I'm going to get turned into an animal. Please tell me we have things in common.
And then if she goes, oh shit, me too, I've just been thinking the same thing.
I might try that.
Then you know it's perfect.
Yeah, I might try it on Match.com.
Oh my
even
God.
though Match.com's total bullshit.
Can that be your Tinder bio? Please date me or I will turn into an animal in 45 days.
I'm going to turn into a horse, but I'm already halfway there.
Oh my God!
Just make him think
I'm pointing that girl on campus right to this
Wouldn't
episode.
that be funny? I want to turn into a, but where I need to be, I'm already a horse.
And then you picture you're just a centaur.
Yeah. No, I would just kind of be like
abstract.
I would just kind of be like, above the knees and below the belly button, I am a horse.
Above the knees and below.
Without a tail yet.
My vagina just cringed.
That would be funny.
No, just kidding.
My dick just went, man, we better get to the gym.
Better start lifting.
I know. Start doing those curls.
Can I use this room? Can nobody else come in? Is that okay?
Sure.
If I use this room?
Go for
Do
it.
some dick curls?
Yeah. What? Wait. Time out.
Time out.
What happened?
Cleo for 5 to 7.
Let's get back to Cleo.
Back to, not Cleo for 5 to 7, Agnes Varda.
Yeah,
so Agnes Varda
Let's
is
elaborate
a
on
French filmmaker. I believe she's French. I don't know 100%. But she is part of the French New Wave movement of films. And the French New Wave came after World War II. It was a look at kind of stepping back from this, propagandized film, expression that these people felt. It was a young people movement, X, Y, and Z, looking to do more non-traditional means of using cinema structure to tell a story. You get things like jump cuts from it. You get things like, non-traditional narratives. You get non-traditional narratives in a sense of like, non-linear narrative structure, things like that. A bunch of experimental techniques come from Cleo from 5 to 7 and the French New Wave in general. So Agnes Varda, she was actually married to another member of the French New Wave group, Jacques Demy, who a runner-up, Umbrellas of Cherbourg, which is an operetta in the French New Wave style. It's excellent film, but it's just a runner-up on the list. We won't go into that much, but. One film that I would say you should watch of Agnes Varda's, aside from Cleo from 5 to 7, she has a really excellent Eclipse collection with some short films, and then I think a feature from the Criterion collection. But I would say that you should watch Vagabond by Agnes Varda, because it's a turn on the documentary style of filmmaking, and it's super intriguing. It's about this homeless girl who's kind of going around to different places, and it's the film, it has people describing what she was like, X, Y, and Z, and then the film kind of leads up to her death, it's
Okay.
it starts off at her death, and then, it goes through what happened to her to get her there. But the thing about it is, it's a completely false narrative presented as a documentary.
Okay.
And that type of narrative structure style is super interesting. I see it as, in theater you have Richard Schechner, who it's like the rocket science of storytelling, I like to say. And I think in a lot of ways Vagabond is also, a rocket scientist of narrative film and documentary film, because it really brings into question as a spectator, how do you process a film when you think it's real versus how do you process a film when you think it's fake versus, oh my God, what happens when you think it's real and it's not fake? Another film that brings up those questions is Fargo, but, it's just super interesting how we process movies differently when they're supposedly real. But then what do we do if they're not real and we've processed a non-real narrative in a different way? You know what I mean? It's super weird to think about, and it's super interesting as well. And also just how, just even as an actor, how you process that, because I think trying to play off your character as a real situation as opposed to playing a character, I think they're slightly different. I can't really probably explain how, but in my head I see them as different things. But yeah, that's Vagabond, and it's an Agnes Varda film. It's excellent. It's so good.
I think you make a good point. I think that the reason that it works is because with it being post World War II, a lot of what we saw during the wars was a lot of just documentary style filmmaking, where a lot, and it would be real people. And now, specifically like with this French New Wave, and it draws a lot of similarity to the Italian neorealism.
Yeah.
You know, because when you're watching something like Bicycle Thieves, you know, you're looking at it just going, it's real life. It's real life Italy.
It's a narrative
post World War
life.
II.
Yeah.
But it's just like the people are the actors, you know, Bruno and his mom and dad, like they're the actors, but you don't see them as up on this acting pedestal. They mingle. They're normal. They're just regular, and you pretty much sit there and go, yes, they may be acting, and I think I'm looking at a documentary. You get that it's a film, you know, throughout.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like these are just two common people, and this could happen with anyone. And I think that, you know, specifically like with Cleo and what you're talking about with Vagabond, I think that's something Agnes Varda was really smart about is, you know, let's shoot the reality. Let's not dress this up, put lipstick on this pig. You know, it's like this is put lipstick on the pig. You know, it's like let's not do that. Let's show the real life, and then let's just follow like a common thing. And Vagabond sounds like just let's follow this person who's complete. This is normal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these people here, and this is just how it could go for one of them.
Yeah, and even further using documentary techniques, like people are framed as if they're in a documentary, they're talking to the camera about this woman, and it's super like strange to process through. But yeah, I think 100%.
I think it's a really neat way to rope people in because it seems like, you know, with a lot of those with a lot of World War II film and just right after it was so much documentary, specifically with what we were talking about with Leni Riefenstahl, you know, shooting that, you know, and the brutal reality. And I think that a lot of European folks probably learned from Riefenstahl, seeing that, you know, how just intrigued, how much more you can draw people in from a documentary mindset, whereas it's just a film mindset and you're trying to sell your story. Or if it's documentary, it's like, it's a reality. Do you want in on it? Look at this.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that they took that and said, you know, we could get more people involved if we show them, like, what the damage was, what the aftermath was, how things started happening. It's not like, you know, it ends and everything's good, like in a Marvel film or something, 100%. You know, where you know, Iron Man and Captain America and everybody decimate a city, but then, you know, like the next day it's all sunshine and balloons and you know, kissing babies and everything's fine. You know, they show that like this is a reality and it's going to take years and years and years to recover from this.
Yes, 100%. And I think, like, two things to that point. I think, one, you know, it also brings up, there's another film that we brought up in the past. It's World of Tomorrow.
Yes.
That plays around with that same structure a little earlier. I don't think as successfully as Vagabond. But then, two, I think there's this new push, too, because, you know, when you go to the theater, it feels like everything is based off a true story. And the thing I always am wondering is, like, why culturally, because, you know, I always watch those, like, MTV, this is the 80s, or MTV, this is the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
And it was talking about how, like, you know, media reflected the culture. And I'm like, what about our culture makes it so that we can't have a narrative unless it's based in reality or something like that, which, you know, there's the argument to be made that film is meant to replicate reality, but I also think at the same time, film is heightened reality, and you can never directly replicate reality. But at the same time, why is everything based off a true story? And even Avengers, you know, playing off of, you know, all of these actors, who they are in real life, and making that as much of the experience as the movie itself is super fascinating to me, and I'm not sure why. You know, that's stuff you and I could go into in another episode, but like, yeah.
No, it is. It's interesting, and I think it's definitely that new wave really roped everyone in because of, you know, like what we said, the reality. You're drawn into the reality. The satire can oftentimes push you away, specifically if it's genre that you're not into.
Oh, yeah.
But if you know it's attached to some sort of reality, you're intrigued. You want to see it.
Well, because people have this idea, I guess, like, you know, in a lot of ways, you know, truth is stranger than fiction. You know, as like a true crime person, like, this crazy shit that happens in reality that, like, you know, films don't show. You know, films can get crazy, but like sometimes reality is even weirder. And I don't know what the fascination is with everything being real. Like, you know what I mean? I
know, but even more, I think a little bit on the next one that we have, Persona from 1966 with by Ingmar Bergman. You know, talking about it, you know, it has a nurse who's helping out a mute, and they find out their personas are starting to flow
merging at
together.
the end, and it's
T-
Liv
tell me-
Ullmann and what's the other actress's name?
I don't know.
Um,
Tell me more about Persona.
Have you
'cause
seen Persona?
This sounds no, I have not. But to me, it kind of sounds like another type of. This is a reality.
Yeah.
And with just a nurse taking care of someone, and it's interesting how such a, you have a very common person who's in a massive practice, being a nurse, and then somebody who's on the other end, an actress. You would think polar opposites in regular society.
Yeah.
So how does this relationship develop?
Well, and Persona is super interesting because, I think Ingmar Bergman is a very honest, surreal director, which is something I love. And, we actually, the next two films are Bergman, so I'm going to kind of mix them, kind of not, because, Bergman, he's such an interesting lens on women, and I think a lot of that comes from his frequent collaborators like B.B. Anderson, and I think it's Liv Ullmann is the other one. Liv Ullmann was the first woman I said. Yeah, Liv Ullmann and B.B. Anderson were the two women. And I think Liv Ullmann is in Cries and Whispers as well. But Persona's super intriguing because the film starts off, there's this boy and then there's a bunch of images. Oh, are you okay over there?
Yeah. I was trying
Our
to
sound
not
woman
make
is making
noise and
so
I,
much noise.
backfired.
I don't mean sound woman literally, I'm just kidding.
He's got a shirt on
I
that
don't
says, "I
make
bring
any
the
sound.
sound."
I just want to be useful.
But a Persona, it presents this narrative, and it's a very concise, close film. It takes its time. And this is the thing I love about Ingmar Bergman. So just know that if you're gonna watch a movie of his, you need to really be in the mood for it. Otherwise, it's gonna feel like a slow burn. It's like if you lit a cigar and just let it sit. That's what the film pacing is like.
Okay.
But these two women, so there's a nurse and then an actress who's being rehabilitated or whatever, and they're both at a beach house, and then slowly it becomes, because the actress is mute, the nurse kind of begins using her as a springboard, because the nurse just starts talking to her, and then she starts talking to her about more, and then she starts getting more and more in depth. And it's really interesting how it takes that, it's a little cabinet of Dr. Caligari with the interplay between doctor and person.
Where the doctor's the voice of the somnambulist,
Yeah.
this nurse becomes the voice of the actress.
Yeah, the nurse becomes the voice of the actress, but at the same time, it almost brings into question, who's the one really taking care of who in the relationship.
Yeah.
But then at the same time as that, not only that, there's a sequence towards the end where, it's shot through both women's perspective, and then it happens with one woman's perspective and it goes through the scene, and then it starts over, but it's the other woman speaking the same lines. And it's so, it even blurs the line between, not only is it who is really in care of who, and looking at those relationships, have they merged?
I wonder if we could call that the Persona effect, and then attach it to Jackie Brown.
You can, yeah.
Because Jackie Brown, how we see,
yeah.
the money, the exchange, and everything go down through 4 different lenses.
Yeah.
So this is very intriguing to be able to see it through the nurse's eyes, and then to see it through the actress's eyes. And like you said, it's almost a bit of a codependence on one another, because with the nurse. Learning more and more about the actress, she's finding more about herself. But then with the actress hearing someone else voice her words other than her, she's probably seeing more. It's almost like you're looking at yourself
also,
and learning from on the outside, looking at yourself.
Looking at the actress relationship. If you and also so there's two things. If you interpret it as if they're the same person, and this nurse kind of speaking out into the ether, waiting for a response back and never getting it.
Yeah.
It really showcases what isolation does to an individual.
Yes.
But at the same time, on the second point, because there's so many ways you can interpret the film, which is something I love about Bergman, is every time you watch it, you get something different out of it. But the second thing is, with their roles in society, not even just the nurse being turned on its head and turning into a patient, but with this actress. Because I think Peter Sellers is a really interesting actor to watch in his he's about to.
I will watch
prime.
Peter Sellers in anything.
Oh yeah, he's excellent.
I love Peter.
But,
He's the Pink. I mean, come on, he's the Pink Panther. Come on.
So good. But if you watch interviews of him towards the end of his life, something really intrigues me about it, and I think it relates to Persona. It's kind of horrifying. So I've been a person who's always been full of existential terror and dread. But when you hear Peter Sellers talk about his life, I think he said verbatim in this interview on the 70s talk show, he said, "I don't know who I am anymore
Yeah.
because I've lost myself in other characters and
Yep.
I don't know who I am. And they're like, haha, you're so funny, Peter. But that's horrifying and
Yeah,
it's
he was
so
being-
interesting.
And I saw another interview.
Uh-huh.
There's a Peter Sellers documentary on
Okay.
Prime Video.
Oh my God.
And I watched it, and it had an interview from him at home, and he alluded to the same fact. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't know who I am. And you
Right.
find out he's a very serious individual, very reserved, kind of reminds me kind of like a Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was an
Yeah.
introvert. I'm an introvert.
Oh, yeah.
I'm totally happy sitting at home and watching films or reading a book. I don't like going out that much. I don't like being out in public. And I think that's just kind of how they are. And I think that it's something that comes with stardom, because when you're out there, nobody knows who you are. They don't know your name. They know a character that you play. When Sly Stallone walks down the street, people yell Rambo. When Arnie walks down the street, they're like yelling Terminator.
Yeah.
Any one of these folks, And I mean, God, I bet when Ed Norton walks around, people still probably yell Tyler Durden.
Yeah.
And it's just how it is.
And what that does to somebody's psyche, and
Yeah, I mean,
think
you have to
taking-
be able to have that separation. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be a little demeaning at times. You have to be prepared for it and know. I think you have to be strong enough in yourself to
Yeah.
know that I'm so much more than that, and these people don't know me, but they're just trying to say hi or associate. So it's a few seconds out of my life, let it happen.
Oh, yeah.
But then when you get home, just know who you are and know that you're secure in yourself, and then that your circle that you keep around you have security in knowing that they know who you are.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
never a character to them. You're their person.
And then this kind of relationship to medicine has, because Liv Ullmann, she was like a premier actress. And like, if you're like a theater person out there listening, she was in A Doll's House. She did a bunch of Ibsen and Strindberg, just like, a very high art actress. And so I guess taking this high art actress woman and, putting her in a role of an actress who doesn't have a voice, because interpreting that is super interesting, because that's the thing with performances and with acting and X, Y, and Z. It's like that whole kind of central nature of who are you if you if you speak other people's words, if you play other people as a living and as not even a living.
Yeah.
I think the type of actress Liv Ullmann was, it's a lifestyle. You know what I mean? Everything's involved around it, and that type of method, like Daniel Day-Lewis, Peter Sellers, X, Y, and Z.
Daniel Day-Lewis is
Oh, yeah.
notorious for staying in character,
Oh,
even
yeah.
when he's away from the camera.
And for quitting, because that's probably quitting acting all the time, because he's so like it's probably so
Yeah.
much.
I imagine it would be a difficult dynamic to be around. But on the subject of identity, then, as we mentioned, there's another Ingmar Bergman film,
Yes.
Cries and Whispers, and this is more now you have a woman who's dying of cancer
Yes.
in Sweden, and her two sisters show up, and all these
All hell breaks loose.
all these repressed feelings come up as she's on her deathbed. So walk us through that.
Because it's like also with Cries and Whispers, it delves more into with Persona, there's this blurring the line between fantasy and reality and surrealism, because it's like these two women could be the same, and I'm sure you could read that into Cries and Whispers. All three sisters are the same, but like it's very not at the forefront of the narrative.
Yeah.
So you get the relationship women share to each other in a repressed society. You know what I mean? So you have women placing judgment on each other and holding each other accountable, or trying to hold each other accountable to three different standards of living, which is super interesting for the time period it's set in X, Y, and Z. But Cries and Whispers is very, very fascinating for its visual style. Everything is just bathed in red, and it's super like beautiful, but also horrifying.
Yeah.
I was thinking like
Well, I think
was
that's-
thinking a little horrified, because I put a lot of my film picks for this have a ton of like vaginal mutilation in it, and like there's horrifying scenes of it in a couple movies I picked, and I'm like,
Yeah.
but
the thing
Cries and
is,
Whispers, it's
you want to. The red just complements it, because anytime that there's inner rage, inner demons, anytime that manifests, nothing manifests gently.
Oh yeah.
I know this personally from dealing with post-traumatic stress and such. When it manifests, it's red. And I think even more so when you're dealing with repressed feelings and you're around individuals that want to stoke that fire and pull it out of you, and then once it's out, everybody's trying to kill the beast.
Oh yeah.
Of course, you need red everywhere, and I think having that hue attached to all that, whether it's brilliant, vibrant, anything, red's important.
That's a
Just
great
the
way
way
to put
that
it.
it signifies, the underlying evil, the rage, and then just what comes out, that everybody's just trying to stab the beast and kill it and beat it after it's dead, just because they want to get the last shot in.
Yeah.
When those things are coming up, because in those situations, if you get the last shot in, you feel vindicated, you feel correct, and that you can walk away from it, even though all anyone involved did was cause more damage than good.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm working on this conference talk now about fetish and cinema, and a crux of it is, which a film we'll talk about later, The Piano Teacher and The Night Porter. But I think it comes into Cries and Whispers because when you can't talk about fetish without repression, and I think in a lot of ways, I think a lot of the problems in our society come from what we're repressing, and how when we repress something, it comes out in negative ways, and like you said, poking the beast.
Well, it doesn't come out in a good way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very loosely put together, and when it comes out, it's like a volcano
Because
going
you have
off.
processed
It's an explosion.
Yeah.
It's a bloodbath. I mean, it comes out and it's red. It's rage, and and even more so, like I said, if it's just you and speaking with a neutral party that's helping you, it comes out, but the neutral party's kind of like the extinguisher and helps you tame it. But when you start into something like that, and it's not neutral parties, and it's other sources of it, and that they have it deep pent up inside toward you, I mean, you're talking about Mount Vesuvius. I mean,
and even in a family
this
scenario.
is 3 of them going off, and you can't tame that.
Yeah.
And that's why I said the only release from that for an individual is just wrongful vindication.
Yeah, and I think it also confronts this idea that I like about Cries and Whispers a lot, that I see a lot in my own life, is this kind of like obligation we have towards this family institution, no matter how, bad that institution might be. There's an allegiance to family that you have to have by nature of being a part of it, being born into it, which is super, fascinating to me, that relationship, because it's something that you see in every culture throughout time, with everyone. Yeah. But that's always intrigued me because, I don't come from like the best family, and so I never really felt an allegiance to it, but this allegiance was something used to kind of control me. And Cries and Whispers directly confronts it, because, you have this family scenario, you have a family coming back together after not being together because,
Well, it's even more vicious that it comes out with one of them on the deathbed.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, even more so, it's one of those things where, are you going to let this go all the way until it's dead?
Oh, yeah, and on one last note on that, it's even super interesting because I don't think those types of things, and I don't think the narrative could have happened if, I mean, obviously the narrative couldn't happen if it, but I think being on a deathbed and being close to death, it forces you to confront things, you know what I mean? It forces that out of you. It's like the ether forcing, whatever you're repressing out of you, because you don't know what's going to happen when you die. And so it's a super good look at that. Igor Bergman's an excellent. So take us off to the next one.
Jump into the 90s. You threw Zentropa in here again.
I totally did.
What did you, why? We have Zentropa, and I know, like last time we were talking, you were talking about Von Trier.
Yeah.
That he's just not a nice person.
He's just a pretty shitty dude.
And like, I know we talked, so I mean, I just, not knowing anything about Von Trier, like I said, this movie, it completely took me away when I saw it. I was blown away. Anytime I think about that final scene that I talked about last week when they're counting down to his death, I can't remember a time that I was that engaged in a film that it just had me. I mean, I've been engaged in films before, but I can't remember anything recently that just had me that on the edge of my seat, my heartbeat following the beats on the screen, and almost felt like I'm suffocating. I mean, the film's hypnotic, the way that it does that, but the other pieces, I really, really do. The story is so complex from the beginning, because you have no idea, why is this American here in post-war, Germany and such, and why is he running a train? And then you kind of see how everyone wants to take advantages now, and super interesting, but the deep emotional connections and how we get, just the screen runs in the background and we get them completely separated. I think it's an incredible way of taking in human emotion, because oftentimes in more modern film, we capture emotion through a facial expression or a specific camera shot or balancing the hierarchy, and such, and we can do it with, non-diegetic sound and things like that. But I think it's really interesting when someone goes to this great length to separate emotional reality from basic reality, and putting life on one side and putting the reality on a completely different side. And it's almost as if they're side by side.
Yeah.
But the people on the outside of it are oblivious to what's going on, but the people on the inside know everything that's going on around them and how it goes.
Well, and also, as much as I don't like Lars von Trier, that blending of technique is super interesting.
Yeah.
But to take it a clear from 5 to 7 direction, where I recommend another film by the filmmaker, Dancer in the Dark is Excellente by Lars von Trier. Especially if you like the musical genre, it's very interesting to look at Dancer in the Dark. I think the reason Dancer in the Dark works is Bjork. But that, needless to say, like, the lens on the film is super intriguing because it tries to break away from all of this kind of beautification of the musical that's happened. I think musicals get a bad rap for being, vapid, for being meaningless, for being feel good, X, Y, and Z, which I don't think is true, but I think Dancer in the Dark believes that wholeheartedly, so it's an interesting look at the musical because it breaks super far away from what a musical is. Now, that's not to say it doesn't have, certain musical elements. All the dances are choreographed, and they're still shot and they're still, like, well choreographed and everything, but the type of narrative the film is about, it's about this woman who's going blind, working in a factory trying to save money for a surgery for her son, so he also doesn't go blind. Her next door neighbor, he's a cop in the area or like something like that. It's like a super small town, and he lets them live on their property. They're out of money because his wife spends a ton of money that they don't have, and he finds out she has all these savings and he steals it from her. And it's super interesting how that relationship works out. But yeah. Dancer in the Dark. You can also watch my weekly episode about it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I know you have a weekly episode about it.
it.
So I was going to say, you definitely need to tune into that. All right, let's get away from Von Trier.
Yes, okay, take us out on this
No,
one.
I love
I'm not
so,
I like Guy Ritchie, but I'm not super fluent in Guy Ritchie.
I'm a huge fan of Guy Ritchie just
this
because
is Nick.
he kind of he flipped it on its head.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally flipped
True.
things on their head and turned it around. Well, I can see my notes. I'll let you know. Sorry, this damn light.
We
I
have this
swear to
light
God.
in the room, which this room is excellent, except for the fact that if we sit in the corner for too long, the lights go
And
out.
we're not even in the corner. We're like almost in the middle of the classroom. We're moving around the whole time, and this dumb fucking light just shuts off, and then we gotta flail our freaking arms around like we're trying to get a T-shirt at a fucking ball game.
Right, if you hear
you know?
like chair scooting,
Yeah,
that's
if you're
probably what happened.
silence and us waving around. It's like that shit in Team America
Totally.
when he's following the van and he's just like, it's me, and he's like, what's he saying? He's like, I think he said, kiss me, and he's like, smart ass motherfucker.
That's the
And it's great. So yeah, so every once in a while we have to dance around. But yeah, I'm a big Guy Ritchie fan. I saw Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels before Snatch. A lot of people, when Snatch came out 2 years later in 2000, Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels came out in 98. Not a lot of people were into Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Even though it's good.
Even though it's
real good.
it's sick.
Yeah.
It's amazing. They were more into Snatch because now in Snatch, Brad Pitt took a role, and so it became Americanized and,
Gotcha.
and such. But still, it's a killer story. But yeah, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrel, very interesting story, very complex. It's very, very funny. Good action, but I think what's most important about it is the snappy dialogue, the back and forth, and then just the elements. I mean, it's literally just a group of friends that are pitching money in so that their friend who's really good at cards can get in on this high stakes card game. But it turns out the card game he's in on, he gets cheated by the guy running the game who ends up to be like this really rich, important guy that you don't want to mess with.
Yeah.
And he ends up going all in and then owing the guy money and all kinds of stuff, not realizing he's being cheated. And then they're trying to figure out how to pay this guy off in so many days before they all get axed. And I mean, they end up dealing with, his thugs. Then there's this group of pot house people, weed growers that they run into. And then there's like gangbangers because they're trying to sell the weed to the gangbangers that they steal, but then they find out it's the gangsters' weed that they stole and they're trying to sell it back to him. So he loses his mind, you know. But I mean, it's that. I mean, they're dealing with loan sharks too. They're dealing with debt collectors, and it's all just kind of like one of those things where it all smashes together, and all it has to do is deal with is like money and drugs.
Yeah, I love that.
and there's like these two antique shotguns that they take that get stolen, and they try to get them to a guy, and then it's also funny the way it's one of those things that connects. I mean, everybody kind of saw it in Snatch, right? How everything comes together at the end, or you see it like right at the ending, and then it switches, and you just go, oh God, what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And we go into one of those areas where you see it from every different lens, you know. So you see it from the lens of the gangbangers, you see it from the loan sharks, you see it from the the four friends, you see it from the weed dealers, and all these individuals kind of crashing into each other at the end of the film. And lo and behold, our guys who we've developed this empathy for, because we know they got cheated, we know they need to get this money, we're afraid of what's going to happen to them. They end up somehow coming out completely unblemished, and any and every problem that they had is dead and gone. And I think that's a really neat element, because it puts them on the edge so much, and you see what sacrifices they'll make to try and make things right. But then when it wraps around to it, like all their problems die, they get to keep the good shit, and then they just move on. You're just kind of going, wow, if it only did happen that way.
Right.
But it's the dynamic of how everyone collides.
Well, and if I want to give something to Guy Ritchie, because I do like Guy Ritchie a lot, even though okay, there are two films. This is probably the only time I'm ever going to say it, because as like a film industry person, I hate talking. I don't hate it, but I hate like publicly talking about films I hate. You know what I mean? But two films I hate. The two films that I hate so much, they're probably my least favorite films, is the King Arthur Legend of the Sword, Guy Ritchie.
Okay.
And Live by Night with fucking Ben Affleck. I hate those two movies more than anything. But that's the last time I'm saying it ever. But the thing I do love about Guy Ritchie is Guy Ritchie's formula is so simple when you look at it. Like he's one of the only directors that has such a simple formula, but he does it so well that when anybody else tries to replicate it, it comes off so disingenuous and it doesn't work. And I think Guy Ritchie is excellent at making like the formula work super well. Like even Aladdin, you know what I mean? He directed the new live action Aladdin movie, and I went into it and I was like,
wait, he did?
Yeah,
I thought Jon Favreau.
No, it was him. He directed it. Yeah, and I went in and I was like, why did Guy Ritchie direct this? And 5 minutes in, I was like, who else would direct this other than Guy Ritchie? And it's super interesting.
If somebody called me about an Aladdin remake, I'd be like, the cartoon's fine, call somebody else. That's all I would do.
I love that.
If Disney called me about anything,
You're
I'd be
just
like,
in a row with
the
a cup of
cartoon,
Joe,
fine.
standing by the kitchen
Call somebody
sink,
else. Yeah.
looking out the kitchen window,
else.
you totally busted trying to get into the house.
Yeah. But yeah, if you mention a film about medieval times and then something with Ben Affleck, I will agree with you that they both suck.
Have you seen Live by Night?
No, and I won't now.
Oh my god.
Thank you.
It's just,
But yeah, I
it's
mean,
the most,
I like Lock, Stock, because if you watch
So
Lock,
good.
Stock, it has a lot of the same characters that you see in Snatch, and so it does make it interesting. They just play different parts, and Sting is in it too, so it makes it fun.
Was it? Yeah, because I forgot. Was it? Because I haven't seen Snatch. I have seen Lock, Stock. Is it
Jason Statham.
continuing the story? Or
No,
is it
no.
like
And
alternate world?
a lot of people get that confused.
Okay.
They think that the films follow each other, but the thing is that the folks who are playing villains in Snatch are good guys in Lock, Stock. So
Gotcha.
it's same characters, same mindset, but it's a Guy Ritchie story, but it's completely different than what we get in Snatch, which we'll talk about here in a few.
Interesting.
But yeah, so that's Lock, Stock. Why don't you tell us about Run Lola Run?
Run Lola Run is one of my favorite films of all time. It's in
okay.
my top 10. It's excellent. It's so fucking good. Also, it has Moritz.
No idea what that is.
He's big kissy lips, and I'm obsessed.
Oh my god.
And he's also in another film on this list, which is another one of my favorite films of all time. But anyway,
Oh boy.
Run Lola Run. It's about this. It's pretty much just like a complete heist movie, and it's very interesting.
It sounds quick, because from what I understand, like this gal,
Yeah.
Lola, has 20 minutes to get like 100,000
Oh yeah.
in Deutschmarks.
But the interesting thing about it is
That's got to be a quick
it opens
film.
with like this very interesting like play on time and these very interesting visual images with time, and you get 3 different ways. My mouth just made a farting noise. It was
It's
really
okay.
weird. It took me out of it for a second.
Hey, if your mouth's making the noise, it's good.
Yeah,
If
God.
there's anything else, I'm fucking quitting. I'll walk out of here. What?
I'm not gonna.
No,
do
don't
it.
even
I'm
think
gonna
about it.
stop
You
myself.
should stop
Anyway,
yourself.
So run, Lola, run. But so there's one way she gets to 20,000, and then it gets to the end, and you're like, oh, this is interesting. It's like 30 minutes into the movie, she gets shot,
Oh,
and then it starts over.
oh shit.
But little things are different, and then it does the same thing, and then it starts over. And little things are different, and it does it 3 times, and it's 3
Wow.
different ways she gets to 20. 3 different ways it wraps up, and I love that, like, because cinema is such a good look at it. And the interesting thing about Run Lola Run in relation to that too is not only do you get 3 different interpretations of how this could have played out, and you get this whole like, because I always get like, oh God, what if I went left instead of right? Would my life be different? Blah blah.
Yeah.
It really like indulges in that, because during Lola going through and trying to get stuff in this 20 minutes, there are little things that change how that works out, but also she runs into people, and there's like the film takes a step back to show like a series of photographs with what happens to them after, and there are like 4 or 5 people I think that it happens to, and their stories change too, and it's super
that's good.
intriguing how
Wow.
it plays off of time, and it plays off of like how life could work out, and it's a very simple film, but it's also super complex in its simplicity, if that makes sense.
What a wormhole.
Right, and the thing about Tom Twyker is from my understanding, actually, Quentin Tarantino consulted with him for Inglourious Bastards because he loved the format of the film so much, and with Inglourious Bastards, it's another look at history. It's like an alternate history like piece.
Yeah, it's a meta history.
Yeah, and so having Tom Twyker from Run Lola Run, who confronts that directly in this film, is super intriguing too, because that's a super clear Hollywood connection to German cinema. But
I like it.
yes, it's
I like it.
excellent. It's so
Let's-
well acted. It's so well done. It's so good.
Perfect. This one, this next one.
Oh yes, I have not seen this one. This is
What?
on you, Nick. I
You
have
need to
not
get,
seen
all
it,
right,
yeah.
you need some culture in your life. Jesus. I'm sitting here, ladies and gentlemen, let it be known, I have someone sitting across from me who has not seen the St. Patty's Day go-to, the Boondock Saints. And please send your hate mail to, what's your email address?
To Nick. So
Oh
I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
you don't know mine. Because they won't. They're gonna send emails thanking me. I'll probably get some candies,
Oh
maybe some
my
flowers.
God.
Because they're gonna be like, Nick, I'm so sorry you had to sit in a room with someone who had not seen Boondock Saints.
Oh my God, I can't.
I feel
believe
despicable.
You're gonna
It's
get
gross.
hacked in
I'm
public.
gonna need a shower after this show. How could
I'm
you?
gonna get hacked.
You
I'm
are.
gonna get-
You are. So Boondock Saints.
get
I mean,
swatted.
it's this great film about these 2 Irish Catholic brothers in Boston who eventually they just take stuff into their own hands and they start snubbing out the scum, the crime, the sick, the awful people of the city. They take it upon themselves to just be these vigilantes and start murdering people left and right. And then they get their friend involved, who is this Jewish guy. Oh my God, is he funny?
Really?
And just the way that it goes, the way everything goes down, it's very interesting how it's shot. Every time that the crimes go down, you see the build up to it and the guys and everything before they go in and they execute it and it gets started, and then all of a sudden it cuts. And then you see the aftermath and the police there and the investigator and it's got Willem Dafoe is the main investigator in it.
I'm sweating.
He's a closet homosexual too, so nobody really knows. But there's a couple
Guess I'm not sweating.
funny scenes with him being gay, but at the same time there's so they'll cut to it, and then Willem Dafoe will come in, and all the cops, the local cops, are trying to analyze the scene, and he's like a special agent that comes in for the crimes, and then he comes in and tells them how it went down, and as he's telling it, it cuts back
Is this
to
like a Sherlock Holmes
it cuts
kind of
back to like
thing?
what went down, so we get to see how the guys were carrying it out. And now Willem Dafoe's just kind of in the scene with them, but he's describing it. He's just like this invisible muse to them in the scene.
Is he coded as like Sherlock Holmes?
No,
is
no.
that, or is it just okay? That's super interesting.
Nothing like that.
I love that then.
But yeah, it's great how they cut to it, and then they end up the gang, the mob starts to bring out this enforcer. They find one of the craziest guys in prison and somehow get him paroled to try and kill the brothers, and then you find out that it's their dad. And so it gives this great twist, and then the kids, the two brothers and their dad go and pull off this execution in a courtroom. Well, the mob boss is on trial. The mob boss that pulled their dad out of jail and not knowing that it was their kids and such, because it's discovered afterwards. But yeah, so the dad and the two kids. Well, the mob boss is on trial for everything. They show up at the courtroom and they get it all worked out with the cops and everything. Like Willem Dafoe helps them set it up to get weapons into the courtroom, and then they make the whole courtroom watch as they sacrifice the guy. It's really good. And they always say this family prayer. They make people get down on their knees and they stand behind them with both their guns pointed at the back of their head. They recite a family prayer and then blow their brains out.
Wow.
It's legit.
And I will say, as somebody who's like loves gangsters and like is super like in love with the gangster genre, X, Y, and Z, you know, to discuss my credibility. No, I'm just kidding. I don't think Irish gangsters get enough love in cinema.
Well, they're not gangsters.
Oh my God, really?
No, they're against the mob.
Shit.
Because that's like I said, it's this Italian mob.
I don't think that
It's this Italian mob guy. Yeah. So they're going up
That's an
against.
interesting play.
They start intertwining
gangsters,
because they're killing people. These Irish Catholic brothers, they're going around smashing people, and then all of a sudden, they get into mob stuff, and then the Italian mob's now trying, and it's the Italian mob that pulls them out.
That's an even more interesting twist on it then, I think. Yeah, that's super cool.
Absolutely.
Nice.
So it's one of those ones you need to.
Nice.
You absolutely need to see it.
Moving to the top of my list.
You need to,
Don't
or else
worry.
you're gonna start losing friends. It's hard.
Oh my
I don't want you to go down that path. But then you go then we get into the second Guy Ritchie film, which is Snatch. A lot of folks have seen, really popular. It's a little more gritty, I would say, than Lock, Stock.
Like gritty how, like more.
Just
violent?
because of the depth that it gets to, specifically when Brad Pitt doesn't agree to fight, and so the fight promoter, who's I think is Bricktop or something like that, he decides to burn his mom's caravan with her inside.
Oh my God.
So it gets kind of dark and brutal in that way. But it's one of those things, where we come to the end, and then we get to see the big mix-up, like how it took place, because they're storming out after the fight. Like we hear the fight's ready to go down, then all of a sudden we hear like a non-diegetic bell, and you got the three guys coming out to escaping behind the place, and then all of a sudden they see the gang leader out there, and the window comes down, and he's like, "Give me the shooter," and then all of a sudden it cuts back to what happened beforehand, and it walks us through how we got to that point, and then we find out that it's not the gangsters guys in the car anymore, it's the pikeys, and they kill him, and it's once again everything disappears, it's all gone, all the bad guys, everybody's out of the way, and all they have to do is catch their dog so they can get this massive diamond out of its stomach. But
I love that.
But I mean, it's another one of those. It's a Guy Ritchie craft. It's only something that he can do, and that I think it did change how people make the film and how people approach their ending. And I think it's just one of those really cool looks. I love it when you get there and everything kind of goes down, and you're just going, "Oh, what the hell? I missed the fight." And just kind of like in Boondock Saints, like, wait, I missed the robbery, I missed the shooting, I missed this, but then you have somebody come in, discuss it, reenact it, so we get to see it through the other lens. So, and I think it's also because, like, if we saw it through the pikey lens the whole time, and everything that was going down, we would know what's coming at the end of the fight. Yeah. But with this, now we get to see what the mobsters want to initiate, and then we get to see the opposite side of they're initiating this, but it's not going to work because of this.
I love that.
And we get to get in tune to that a split second before they find out, and then as it always cuts back to them, there's tragedy on the bad guy and success for the good guy.
Which I think that makes or breaks a heist film, and it's something Guy Ritchie does so well. I don't think he necessarily pioneered it for the genre, but he really drove it home, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
Because a heist movie works or doesn't if depending on how well or how not well that explanation goes, and I think Guy Ritchie always does a great job.
Oh, absolutely. And I just there's some great. He puts together just some really, really special scenes. I specifically like the one where the hitman goes into the bar and the guys are trying to hold him up with the guns, and he doesn't give a shit whatsoever and just sits down. He's drinking his beer. Then he throws his gun down on the table, and he starts doing this whole analogy about how they're like, and he's like, oh, you must be the dick, and you two are the mincy little balls. And he's like, because your guns say replica on the side, and then you get the quick camera shot of boom, 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 the letters REPLIC. And then he's like, and because mine says Desert Eagle .50, and then they start to freak out, and he's like, yeah, you see, you're getting smaller now. Your mincy little balls are going. And it's just this great dynamic that they throw in there. And,
I gotta say, Guy Ritchie parodies are the fucking funniest though. Like there's this one where he's like, he just pretty much does introductions for the whole time, and it fucking kills me. I love it. He's like, this is Mickey's son of a bitch. We call him that because he's a son of a bitch. Yep. And that shit like cracks me up. I love it.
Yeah. I love the characters, the complexity of the characters that he comes up with, like when he's coming up with, Bricktop and the diamond people and the jewel people and things like that. When all that stuff comes together, I love it, and it rounds in the personalities that each and every one of them have. They have a very unique personality, and it fits because it's almost like there's a check boxes that you have to fill for a Guy Ritchie film. You have to make these check boxes, and one of the main areas is going to be character development. You have got to have these specific attitudes, these specific personas in order for it to work. If you try and change any of those characters, the film is shit.
Yeah.
But the way he puts it together, it makes it impressive. Yeah. So let's talk about...
Okay, trigger warning for this next one, because I'm going to go into an interesting part of it. The piano teacher. It is...
I know nothing about this one.
Fucking insane. It's such a good film. It's so good. It's probably also in my top films ever. Haneke's one of my favorite directors ever. I would recommend you watch it, Nick. But I saw it in a class though, actually, and remember when I said last episode that there was a film that featured porn in it? Yeah. That we saw in class.
You did.
This was
yes,
that film.
That's the one very small piece I remember about, because I know you alluded to it. And you said we would definitely bring it up in this series. So
it's about a classically trained piano teacher who, one of those people who classical music is their lifestyle. I played violin for 10 years, classically trained violin, so I don't, that world is very crazy. But she's a piano teacher. And the thing about her is, she has this mother presence in her life, and it gets super Freudian with the mother-daughter relationship. But she's super repressed. So, if we're talking, the most repressed ever, it's crazy. And this man gets involved with her, but it's super interesting how their relationship...
Now, is it her student?
Yes, I think so. I think he auditions and they don't let him in, and then he gets it. I don't 100% remember if he's
So it's a younger man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. A little bit younger. Yeah. And the interesting thing that I wanted to talk about in relation to fetish with this is it brings up a lot of fetish questions that are very intriguing to me, especially, and I've been researching this one for that conference talk, but so I guess to explain and drive the film home is super interesting because she's into stuff that's non-consensual and this whole BDSM thing, but there are rules involved with that, you know what I mean?
So she's a bit of a masochist.
Yeah, 100%. And it delves into the psychology behind that as well, in a very even keel way, which is very, it's very hard hitting because it's so real.
Because usually something like that, it just alludes right to daddy issues.
Oh yeah, which is a little bit more complex than that, I think.
Which is good. I'm glad it's more complex.
Oh yeah, because that's the big old thing about the fetish community is everybody's always daddy.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes, but yeah. So then introducing this very naive young man, who's probably the most crazy thing he's done is slap a girl,
Yeah.
The crux of the film happens, the climax of the film happens, and this is why I put a trigger warning, is because, she wants him to, rape her with all these rules of how that will play out. You know what I mean? So it's, it's
so
non-consensual.
She has a rape fantasy.
Yeah, and there's a lot of rules entailing that, but, he misinterprets it because it's such a different world to him, and he can't understand why he can't just come in and sweep her off her feet and love her normally. Yeah. But the thing is about a repressed person, and not only a repressed person, repressed person with so much trauma is you can't. That's not how it works. You can't just come and give him a hug and everything's fixed. You can't just come in and like romance them.
It's not a straight hallway to their heart.
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
It's behind a lot. It's a maze of locked doors.
Yeah, 100%. And also those people like that, and like, you know, the thing that fascinates me about like fetish and things like that I like to deal with in film is people love different. And you know, not everybody loves the same, and it's not a problem, I guess, to be loved in different ways. But when people don't understand that, so he comes in and he rapes her, he doesn't follow her rules, so he just actually rapes her, but he's confused because he thinks that's what she wanted. But like, and it's this whole like crazy interplay, and then she sees him at the end and she just stabs herself, and it's fucking insane. And it's just the psychology that it goes into, you know, this whole the way it interprets these relationships between, you know, a traumatized person and a non-traumatized person, or like, you know, somebody who's been through hardship but maybe not isn't experiencing as much trauma as the other person. It's just a whole different, like, dealing with that relationship is so important, because I think nowadays, you know, you have so much weaponization of mental health, and you have so many people, you know, using that and using their traumas to control others, that like when you see somebody dealing with their trauma and trying to be loved despite their trauma, but it coming out in a different way, you get a different type of relationship there. And I really appreciate how the film showcases it, because I'm not trying to say like she's healthy. She's not healthy.
Yeah.
But the way it showcases her is a very realistic depiction of, you know, a broken woman, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's excellent.
Interesting.
The piano teacher.
That sounds. It's a little wild.
It's a wild ride, guys.
I think I might have to.
If you're gonna watch The Piano Teacher, because you think, you know, there's a cover of them like hugging in like a bathroom on the cover.
It's
and
not
it's like
that
The
gentle.
Piano Teacher.
Yeah, it's not.
You be ready.
It's not Disney.
Oh, you get ready. Yeah. Get ready. It's a lot. But anyway,
Those are some of the times that I get nervous. Not so much during the winter time when I watch a film, but like during the summertime, because I'm, you know, down bottom floor of my house. You know, and I mean, like, through, like, the sliding door and through the windows, like, you can see my TV and stuff. And so sometimes I wonder, like, when I'm watching films that get a little racy or such, or when there's words being said, and, like, my screen door, it's just my screen door. I'm always wondering, like, if my neighbors are just going, what the hell's going on? You know?
You just log into the chat.
Yeah.
Nick is watching some pornography.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I even get nervous about, like, when I'm playing music sometimes too, just because it goes, like, some days I feel like straight up gangster rap, you know, and I'll be blasting like Wu-Tang or something like that. But then another day I'll just be like, I want to listen to powerful women today, so it's like Beyonce and stuff, you know. And I go back and forth, but I always worry that, like, they're looking over at the wrong time, you know, and I'm just kind of going,
You're
oh
watching
shit.
the Partition music video, they're like, what the hell is
Yeah,
he watching?
but it could also be one of those things, like, if they ever question me, I'd be like, what fuck pervert, leave me alone, you know. But
you're the real pervert.
It's like, it always makes me wonder. But I wouldn't have to worry about this one. But yeah, there's a part in it. But Death at a Funeral.
Oh yeah, Death at a Funeral. But
incredibly,
really
what?
quick, I just semiosis to this from your like blasting gangster rap. So I had my ex-boyfriend from high school. He's like, you know, he would be parodied on The Whitest Kid You Know. Like, that's the kind of white guy he is. Which, like, nothing wrong against white guys. I love you out there. You know, it's fine. But, like, we really liked, you know, NWA, you know.
Oh,
and,
I
like,
love
stuff.
NWA.
They're excellent. They're so good, right?
Yeah.
But, like, he was like, Erynn.
Like when Straight
Oh
Outta
my God.
Compton came out, Straight Outta Compton, I mean, it gave me goosebumps.
And you went to
I loved
DU
every
and you
minute
could
of it.
tell that, like, that was the most, like,
Well, you can't spell
the
dumb
most
without.
he's experienced.
That's what everybody says down here. You can't spell dumb without DU.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And he's like, you know, because we got together in high school and then we went to college. We came from, like, small-ass mountain community, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like 3 black people in our class, you know? So then he
No,
goes,
that's how it went
he
up in
goes,
my community.
"Yeah."
And
Oh, really?
if and the very few of us that were into that kind of music, we were just like, psh, you guys don't have it figured out. You don't know what you're doing.
But yeah, so he was like, oh my God, you know, I went into this kid's room. Because, like, they would always leave their doors open, I guess, and, like, big, you know, and that's whatever. He was like, they were blasting NWA, and I was like, oh my God, I love that song. And I was like, that black kid kicked you out of his room, didn't he? He goes, yeah.
Yeah, you can't just walk in and go, oh my god, I love that
Yo,
song.
what's up, home dog? That song's the shit.
Yeah.
Beep beep.
I would wait
boop,
until
beep, boop.
I'd wait until I saw him somewhere.
I'm like,
and I'd
maybe
just
get
be
to know him first.
Yeah, I'd wait till I like cross past him and be like, or talk to him and be like, oh, I heard you bumping NWA. That's some good shit, man. I love them too, you know.
Maybe don't like come
Not
in
just
hard.
like walk in their room, you know. I mean, God, they probably thought he was the cops.
Oh yeah, they were
You know?
probably like, who the fuck is this weird
Who
kid?
is this cornbread eating motherfucker? Who is this white bastard coming?
Because like the other awkward thing is when like, you know, you're a person of color and then a white person's like, hola, y como está? And you're like, what?
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, Nick,
Yeah,
Death at a
that's it.
Funeral.
Yeah, Death at a Funeral. I made a mistake. Like I never knew that this was a comedy, and I was never. And this is actually the one that kicked me off to start venturing into a lot of the new films, because the ones that we're going to talk about from here on out, the last couple, are all very, very recent. And
Well, I think this formula is being reappropriated because there's that film coming out with what's his butt from most recent James Bond. That's like
Daniel Craig.
they're all they were all at someone's funerals, or that some guy died at like I don't know. It feels
out.
like that formula.
We'll figure it out when it comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was neat just because and this is where I really discovered this new dynamic that they do. But Death at a Funeral is pretty funny because, you know, it's like this whole dysfunctional British family gets together and everybody has their own little quirks about them and such. And they're there because their father had just died. But then for some reason, what's his name? Peter Dinklage? Is
Yes.
that who it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
So Peter Dinklage is there, and they have no idea why this person is here, but he keeps like mourning and staring at everyone and stuff, and they can tell he's just equally as upset. So they finally the young man who's now acting kind of like, I guess, is the patriarch for the family since the father's passed. You know, Peter Dinklage catches him in his father's den, just catching a breath, and then he shares with him why he's there, and you find out that their father had a dark secret, that he had a homosexual relationship with Peter Dinklage, and they don't want it to get out.
Who
but
wouldn't smash
Peter
Dinklage?
Peter Dinklage like wants certain things. It's kind of like a little blackmail kind of thing, and so they get really upset, and it ensues with this hilarity because, I mean, they get him all whacked out on drugs, and they tie him up and take him down.
What country was this
But
film? I'm
then
just super curious.
Somewhere in Europe.
That's interesting.
Somewhere in Britain, I think.
Okay,
in
that
England,
makes sense.
somewhere in England, I believe.
That makes sense.
But yeah, and then it turns out somebody starts giving him uppers instead of downers, and so he's out. And they decide it's great because the stuff they do. It's funny things that happen with Peter Dinklage. Like, bless him for playing this part because it just had me in tears. And it's even better when they try and hide him in the coffin, and then everybody's kind of sitting around listening to the viewing, and they think Peter Dinklage is dead because they think they OD'd him. But it turns out that they just gave him so many uppers, he's losing his mind. So then the coffin starts bouncing and making noises, and then he breaks out of it, and there's bodies rolling everywhere, and it's huge. And like, yeah, one of the the sister brings her boyfriend, and he accidentally gets some drugs, and he's just totally tripping balls and losing his mind, and he locks himself in a bathroom. Then they find him out naked on the roof, thinking he can fly. So there's a lot of very creative things that come into it. But like I said, Death at a Funeral, really, it ignited, it motivated me to watch some of these other ones, which is next one. This one's
Really
really
quick though,
good.
on Death at a Funeral, I think it's really interesting being a British film too, because I love the way it takes this like Agatha Christie-esque ensemble mystery and like scenario, and then turns it on its head with, you know, the homosexual relationship X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And like, you know,
It's-
I just love that a lot.
It's just funny how it's built around that dynamic,
Yeah.
and how the whole family's doing everything that they can to keep it suppressed.
Which British culture,
At the same time, like as soon as that announcement happens, everything else starts to unwind around it, and
Yeah.
it just becomes this massive event. But yeah, being motivated by that, I think like the last film on our list I had watched, and which got me into some of these earlier ones. But I read the plot for this one here, In Bruges, Martin McDonagh film, and it seemed really interesting, so I jumped in and watched it, and it's wild. Colin Farrell's in it, and Colin Farrell's in next the
He's so
few
good.
movies. He really crushes it when he's. I think he's easily one of Europe's leads, by far. But it's interesting. You have these two guys that are just assassin hitmen and stuff, and they end up in Bruges because their boss decided to send them on a vacation. But the really reason they did is to off Colin Farrell. They want him out of the thing, and it goes into this wild thing of morals, ethics, hitman to hitman, what's going on. It's really funny when the boss finally comes down to check things out because Colin Farrell's just up in arms about Bruges. He hates it so much, and he complains about it left and right, not realizing it's the town that he's supposed to get killed in.
I always wonder what actual hitmen think about the moral conundrums that happen in these hitman movies.
I would think. I mean, it's just.
I would think it's similar, but
It's
then
a
again,
job.
I'm a normal person.
I
I'm not a
think
hitman,
I think with this one, it's just because they're so close and they're friends, but their boss is the one that's really ruthless. And so it creates an interesting dynamic. But yeah, you get toward the end, and then his buddy just really can't make it. He cannot carry it out and kill Colin Farrell. He ends up killing himself. But even before he does, it gets a little satire because he goes to commit suicide. He jumps from this bell tower and he splatters all over the place when he hits the street, and like his head is still alive. So he kind of warns Colin and sends him on his way. But In Bruges
Colin, get the fuck out of here.
In Bruges is a fun one. But how about you talk about My Best Enemy before we get to the next Farrell film?
My Best Enemy, a lot of people say that it rips from Inglourious Bastards and this whole idea of meta history.
This is a comedy, right?
It is, yeah. I don't think it does. They were in production at the same time, and I think it's just, it's a natural step for Germany processing through its cinema, Nazis and X, Y, and Z. At its core, it's a heist film, which is what I love about it, because it's about, it's about getting a painting, it's about getting, I think, a Da Vinci painting, something like that.
Okay.
But the thing I love about it is it's about two friends, two buddies. They're the closest of friends. One of them becomes a Nazi. One of them is a Jewish man. While they're on the way to the concentration camp, the plane crashes.
Okay.
And he rips his friend's uniform, and they switch roles.
Oh, wow.
And it's so interesting. It's just such a fascinating, plot point, and just what happens, because you get the friend on an ethical high horse, but then the other friend appropriates his image in order to survive, essentially, and then you have this heist element rooted in it with this stolen artwork, and it's just such an excellent open and shut film.
I'm trying to think. It draws parallel to an older film. Oh God, I wish I could remember it. It's got Roger Moore in it, and it's an Eagle son. I can't remember what the heck it is, but it's an older one. I saw it referred to in a book, but it's very similar, where you have some American troops and everybody on an island, and they're moving artwork and goods from the Nazis. I wish it's not Catch-22. But I know it has Roger Moore in it playing as a commander. I read about it in a Inglourious Bastards book, and it made me check the film out and watch it.
It's not even his friend takes on he takes on the Nazi image to survive, but he never becomes a Nazi.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he never becomes what his friend became. And then at the end of the war, they all it's just so fucking good. So his to get into it a little bit more, his friend knows that they have this priceless painting or whatever, because their family ran a big gallery before, but since they were Jewish, it got grabbed, and then they're trying to get the paintings, because that was a huge part of Nazis, was taking a bunch of art, burning art that wasn't seen as fit, keeping art that was X, Y, and Z. So they have this really priceless artwork, and then they're trying to figure out where it is. The dad puts it behind his big painting, his self-portrait, and so son knows it, and X, Y, and Z. So the plot finishes, and then they're all at the the gallery at the end, because the Nazi friend reopens it because he gets let off or whatever, and then he invites them, and he's like, "Oh, thanks guys for being here," and he's like, "Yeah, you piece of shit, give me can I have my dad's painting? Can I have that over of anything? You took our gallery, X, Y, and Z." He's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'll just give it to you. That's fine." He gives him the painting. They're leaving, and they're like, "Fuck you, dude." The painting had the priceless artwork in the back of it, and it's just so fucking satisfying.
Oh man,
so good.
I like it.
Oh my god, yeah. Talk about a great heist.
I'm gonna have to check that.
It's so good. I think you would love it, Nick.
Yeah.
It's right up your alley.
I might do that instead of the piano teacher.
You might want to do that.
The piano teacher, I'm gonna have to work up to that.
Do piano teacher and then decompress with My Best Enemy.
Oh god, we'll figure something out. So now
I
let's.
would offer to watch it with you, but it's a weird film to watch with people.
I don't. That's a film I would watch by myself.
You need to watch it alone,
I would
probably.
never.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like I'm such a big fan of Ren and Stimpy. I love Ren
my
and
God.
Stimpy, and I have all of it. I have it all on DVD. But there's one rare one
Don't
that
you
I have
wanna
called.
cuddle?
There's like one called The Lost Episodes.
Oh.
And it gets deeply brutal and psychotic. And I remember one time I was watching it with someone, and they weren't where, I guess it's, I don't want to say they weren't at my level of humor. I guess they weren't as sick as I was.
Yeah.
You know, they couldn't reach my depths of humor, you know.
Yeah.
And I remember there's this one scene where it's just nuts, and Ren ends up just like brutally murdering someone with a gun, and he has just this sadistic smile on his face as he's doing it. And I thought it was a funny scene. I was like, it's pretty good. But the person watching it was like, oh my God, that is so messed up. And I was like, yeah, we'll never watch. So yeah, that's why I think the piano teacher, I'm watching it by myself.
I love the one because I make this joke to myself all the time. The one where like he's like sawing wood, but they're just doing it, and then he's like, okay, get out of here, and you're just like, don't you want to cuddle? That kills me.
That's when they're making the log commercial. But,
oh my God! But My Best Enemy is so fucking good. It's so good.
I'm gonna have to check that out. So
I think I may have a copy, but Destinowski has a copy for sure.
There's now this one that we were talking about at the front of the episode, The Lobster.
The Lobster.
And everybody, if no one's seen it, they're probably like, why is Erynn asking Nick what animal he would be? So let's describe it a little bit.
But really quick, can I tell a story about my grandparents watching it for the first time, which I think is good to set up The Lobster.
Okay.
They watched it and my grandparents love watching a ton of movies.
Mm-hmm.
It's the one movie they've seen where they were like, what the fuck was that? That was so fucking weird. But they bring it up all the time.
Really?
Yeah, so they always think about it, and they always bring it up, and they always talk about it.
Yeah.
But they're always like, that was so fucking weird. And I love that.
It was, and I just think specifically with the relations that go on. So what happens is like we're in this dystopian future, and people have to in this city have to move into a hotel. And when they're in that hotel, they have 45 days to find a partner, a significant other, someone to marry. And if in that 45 days they don't find anyone, they get transformed into an animal of their choice. And then they just get sent out to the forest to wander. And so Colin Farrell, as the film opens, you find out Colin Farrell, it's his time. He needs to report to the hotel, and his 45 days is going to start, and he has a dog. But you find out the dog is his brother, who he didn't have love. And when his brother, turned into a dog, ran away, and then came in, he took him in. So Colin Farrell ends up at this place, and we start to see just how their relationships are put together. And then even more so the lengths that some people go to, like some people start to lie and get into it and everything. And it's very interesting, like when they start to live together, how they put them out on boats and stuff. It's very like, I would think that this would have been a film that Aldous Huxley would have written, who wrote Brave New World and such. It really felt like that, but it's interesting because Colin gets there, he gets checked in, he has his brother with him, the dog, and he decides, they're like, what animal do you want to be if you don't make it? He's like, I guess it'd be a lobster. And so, which is interesting, he has his reasons for doing it, but as he's moving around, like trying to relate with people, he's finding out that relationships aren't working, and he sees one guy lie to get in with the woman that he was pursuing, and they're more in tune towards each other. So he gets to a point though where it's difficult to find a relationship after this guy takes it. So now he needs to lie a little bit himself. So he goes in with this lady who's just brutal. She has no feelings whatsoever, and he can't show emotion, and he tries to keep it going for a little bit, but then she kills his brother. And he finally breaks down after that, which is a scene that the ASPCA would kill. It's disturbing. Like you see it, you're just like, oh God.
Oh my God, yeah.
But it's tough. But you see, he goes to that length to try and do it, and then he breaks, and then everything's about to start over, and then you see him. He meets someone else, somebody who's trying to escape, who says, we don't need to do this, and then now he's going around and he's starting to tell people the truths about their relationships, like who lied and such and everything, and the people who you think in the relationship would be like, oh my God, and be upset with a significant other, they're mad at him, and they smack him in the face and send him on his way, like, get the fuck out of here.
And the thing I love about it too is we don't turn into fucking animals, but I think it really is so relevant because I've processed through this a lot because I'm a person who I just got out of a relationship and I'm a very I'm fine being alone person. I don't need a relationship. It's whatever. You know what I mean? If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'm not searching for it because I don't need it. And it's just that I almost feel like a unicorn sometimes because people are like, "What do you mean? You don't want to stop love?" And I'm like, "I'm not stopping love. I'm just not."
Yeah.
And I think the lobster really pushes back against this notion that it's almost like love in our society has become such a sterilized thing because it's something people feel like they have to do because that's how you live your life. You get married, you do this, you have kids, and that's something I really connect with and really appreciate about the lobster is pushing back against that notion because I think we're in an unhealthy place in our society with what we feel like relationships should be or what we feel like what we have to have X, Y, and Z.
So is that your animal? Would you be a unicorn?
I would not be a unicorn.
What would your animal be?
Oh fuck! Put me on the spot.
I know.
I didn't think about it. Shit.
I have.
Okay, let me think.
I would probably want to be some sort of apex predator.
You're like Godzilla.
No.
Describe an apex
I would want to be a
predator.
great white shark.
I fucking love
I
that.
think that would be so cool.
Holy shit, that's the shit.
Well, it's because I have this quote. I have this
Great white
quote
shark.
that I read it every Monday, and it gets me going.
I love that.
And you see, it's got
Oh
the
my
great.
God,
I'm
let me
showing
see
this,
it.
but
Read it aloud.
okay.
Can you read it aloud? Is it?
Oh, it's fine.
Okay.
It's inappropriate.
Is
You know
it-
me.
is it inappropriate?
How's the F-bomb counter coming on? I was about to say. No, this is one of my favorite ones. It's do sharks complain about it being Monday? No. They are up early, biting stuff, chasing shit, being scary, reminding everyone they're a fucking shark.
Reminding everyone they're a fucking shark.
That's what I'm talking about. So that's why I would do it.
Sharks are my favorite animal. Fun fact about Erynn. But I have a irrational fear of the megalodon. The megalon? The
Megdalon.
big ass
Megdalon.
Megdalon. I
Yeah,
have an
the-
irrational fear. I'll be in a 12-foot side of a pool and I'll be like,
Well, yeah,
an idiot.
I think that's one thing that's really cool, and it's another reason why I'd want to be a great white shark. Because one, nothing in the ocean would mess with me unless I screwed with some dolphins. Because bottlenose dolphins
dolphins
murder.
are the fucking
Dolphins
are
murder
fucking
sharks.
crazy. Yeah.
Dolphins murder sharks, but I don't want to be swimming around doing flips and weird shit with a bunch of other dolphins. I want to go around and be a shark.
I love how fully thought out this is.
Oh yeah. But the other reason I would do it is because I would be an apex predator of the ocean. But the other piece is only 3% of the world's oceans we know of what is there. They have been mapped.
Yeah.
There's a whole other
Which is horrifying to think about.
massive
It's
amount of
terrifying.
ocean that we don't know what's underneath.
we can't get there 'cause
so
the pressure's so bad.
how cool would that be just to be a shark going to all these
Fucking
places?
swimming around.
And then even more so, I think it would be cool to get near whaling ships and stuff and kill whalers. I think that would be cool. Just kind of do a little sneak around thing, hide behind a big minke whale or something like that. And then as soon as the guy got too close, just come out the water like Jaws and just bite him in half.
I need a
just
sequel
be like,
called
yeah.
The Shark, and you sabatage every chance you have at love so that you can go on a one-man crusade against whalers.
I think I've already had every chance at love. So
You're like, Erynn, we're there.
we're there.
I would be, going with my second
Good,
favorite
tell me.
animal, I would be a jellyfish.
A jellyfish.
I mean, jellyfish
Just
jellyfish,
hanging out,
yeah,
stinging people, being a dick.
They live eternally. They're very intelligent.
Oh, they do.
sting people.
Okay. There you go. Give it a shot.
They just kind of hang out.
I would want to try and grow myself
They're
into a
so
megalodon.
beautiful.
I think that would be cool. I would
I'm
try.
beautiful.
I would want to be, if I could be a great white, I would try and be the biggest one. I would just go around eating all the junk food that the ocean has to
My stomach
offer.
just got sick.
I think it would be fun.
I'm so irrationally scared of sharks that it's even weirder because they're my
Oh
favorite
no!
animal.
When I saw Jaws, I was so young. It
Everybody
terrified
ran
me.
from shores, you
Well,
said.
you wouldn't get in a pool. You'd be afraid of getting in the bathtub. I mean, God, even at night when you were sleeping, you'd have dreams and you would have to throw your covers and sheets off to make sure there wasn't a shark in your bed.
Oh my
It was
God.
terrifying. So here, tell.
Yeah, I'd be
so
a
yeah.
jellyfish. I'd be like.
So
45 days jellyfish.
enjoy the lobster. Enjoy the dialect, the way it's written. Specifically when Colin Farrell's trying to identify with the lady with no soul, right away.
Oh, yeah.
And that somebody jumped out of the window because they didn't want, and you don't see them.
Yeah.
But there's like all this screaming and agony going off screen, and they're just having this conversation with no emotion. And he's like, I wish you'd be quiet. You know, I got some golf in this morning. I'm trying to get a nap. You know?
Yeah. The other thing I love about The Lobster too, and this director specifically, I can't pronounce his name to save my life because I suck. But I think it's Yorgos Lanthimos. Is that it? But the thing I love about his work.
Lanthimos.
Oh, okay, great. The thing I love about his work though is that he's so it's so existentially horrifying.
Oh yeah.
But there's something so quirky and lovable about it.
It's funny.
Right?
There's a lot of funny. I mean, even in Bruges, you know, when you describe it, and it's not from the same individual, but it's kind of like that same mindset. Europeans have always thrived on this dark humor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much, like when we were talking the other day about Casino Royale, you know, with Peter Sellers, who we talked about earlier, who in that film, like literally has one of the funniest scenes I've ever seen in my life. But at the same time, you know, we get this, there's so much dark, dense comedy in there. And it kind of comes a little bit from the Monty Pythons and such, you know, but the thing is that when they've taken that dense comedy and like Monty Python had, and they've added a little bit to it and modernized it, it still makes it really fun, but it makes you have to pay attention and get involved in the film, really appreciate what you're watching to get it. I mean, if you're just a random viewer, you're going to miss half of what's going on. But if you can really sit down and involve and you know, pull the film apart, unpack it intelligently, you're going to be laughing the whole time.
Yeah.
In Bruges doesn't sound like something like that. The Lobster doesn't sound like it would be. None of it sounds funny or amusing. It sounds like it would be these, you know, these weird, hard epics, but then you get into it and there's a lot of humor.
Oh yeah, and that's super interesting that you say that too, because I think it brings up this thing. I think in American cinema, comedy has this like, you know, connotation that you don't put politics in comedy. And I think 9 out of 10 times it's like that. You do get like your Team America World Polices and X, Y, and Z, where it's very effective.
Politics is the easiest thing to make comedy about.
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's just a political propaganda machine
Yes,
that doesn't want you to do it.
100%.
Everybody else is screaming. They're at the door trying to kick it over, saying, please, please, please do this. Write this. Show it to us.
Which I think European directors have kind of figured out the best way to use comedy as a device to insert like looking at society in a different way.
Yes.
And I think it's something we're lacking in American comedy because you know there's this idea that like comedy has to be separate from society. It's where we go to escape, blah blah blah. But that's so dumb. But yeah, that's super interesting that you bring that up because I haven't really thought about it since now. But
I enjoy it. So, all right,
next one.
We're gonna these are our last two. You introduce the penultimate here.
So Raw. It's I love Raw because I think it's a really good encapsulation of
This sounds very zombie-like.
It's fucking horrifying. It's another one of those horrifying ones. It's
I'm not horrified. Look at me. I'm waving my arms to turn the freaking light on.
Nick was saying that as he's waving his arms
I know.
frantically to turn on the light.
Yeah, I'm like waving and cheering, trying to get this effing light to turn. I swear, we need like a Roomba, or I need to bring like a remote control car
fucking
or
hilarious,
something.
a Roomba.
So
we'll get a.
I'm gonna get a little remote control car and just drive the bastard
That's
around every
fucking
time, so we're not sitting here flailing about.
We'll get like a what is it called? A droid, not a droid.
A drone.
A drone. Just floating.
Oh, we couldn't. They're so loud. They're
really?
loud. Yeah, they make a lot of noise. In fact, I shot one down the other day. It was buzzing outside my window.
I'm sorry.
It was outside my bedroom window, literally like about after midnight. And I saw the fucker. So I snuck into my backyard. I almost put my fatigues back. I almost put my BDUs on just to be disguised. But yeah, went in, snuck into my backyard, unraveled the hose, and took the thing down.
You said shot it, and
I did.
You said shot it, and then you said
I shot it with
I was
the
in my
hose.
bedroom, and I thought you meant grabbed gun. From
No.
I was like,
I wouldn't
damn,
be
Nick.
here. I wouldn't be here. No, I peeked at and I caught it through because I have the plantation shutters, and so I kept hearing this. And
What
I
was it
like,
doing?
It was just hovering outside my window,
What the
and
fuck?
I'm like, what the hell? So yeah, I finally I peeked, I closed it, I went into my backyard, unraveled the hose really quick, and
Are you a person of
quietly.
interest?
And then I was like, bah, 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 and I got it to flip over with the hose, and then it hit the ground. And then I opened my back gate, I grabbed the thing, I spiked it in the middle of the road, and I walked back in my house. And I was just like, if anybody's got a problem with me breaking their drone, then come knock on the fucking door. I didn't care. And that time I would have answered probably with a real gun, not a water gun. But yeah, if you want to...
You fucking Gangs of New York did the shit out of that drone.
I was pissed.
You were like, this is an example.
Yeah, I'm like, why the fuck are you flying outside my window?
Yeah,
I'm trying to
that's super
sleep. I
awkward.
wake up
Jeez.
and I just hear this loud buzzing, and I'm just kind of going, what the hell? And the blinds were cracked just a little bit, you know, because I try and shut out some of the light. But it's like they were trying to see in my room. So I'm like, all right, you want to see something?
So weird.
You're going to see this thing getting broken in the middle of the street. And yeah, I didn't give a shit, and nobody's been by to talk to me about it since. I got a pretty good idea where it came from, so I'm eager. So yeah, I know they're not listening, but in case they were, I know who you are, you son of a bitch.
I know who you are, you fucking asshole.
Fuck your drone.
Raw.
Talk about Raw.
So I think Raw is a very great example of, because you have this really interesting, I think the place female directors have been most commercially successful these last 10 years, I want to say, is in horror. And you have this really strong female horror push, and I think horror film is one of the best places women can showcase a different lens on violence and sexuality, because horror film is such an open genre for that. And I think Raw is very interesting. It's about a vegetarian. I believe she's either vegetarian or vegan. She comes, it's a huge plot point
And
that
she
she comes
becomes
from
a
that
meat
kind of
eater.
family.
Wow.
It's fucked. So she goes to college to be a vet, right? And her sister's there, and her sister's like an older, fuck everybody, kind of person. And she has to eat this liver as a hazing thing, right? And so she's like, just do it. She's like, no, mom and dad, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, just fucking eat it. It doesn't matter. She eats it. And come to find out, the reason her mom is so hard a vegetarian was because when her mom was in school, she started getting this rash, and this need for meat and flesh, right? So she buys a bunch of raw chicken and she eats it.
Oh, God.
Her sister is waxing her nether regions, and she has to cut off the strip. It's fucked. And she snags her, and then she pulls back and kicks her sister. Her sister slices off her finger.
Oh, God.
And passes out. Starts eating her sister's finger.
Oh my God.
It's fucking crazy. But the thing I love about it is it's this turn on. It's this grotesque turn on a coming of age story.
My God.
Yeah, it's super fucking crazy, and it deals very strongly with sexuality. It hits it on the head with sexuality. There's this, because in a lot of ways, you could say that this thirst for cannibalism can be equated to repressing sexuality, and it can you can read a Puritan kind of lens into it, I think.
It becomes a lust for flesh.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just kind of showcasing what forcing young women into roles does, forcing women into I guess this puritanical kind of sense around their sexuality, what that does, but it showcases that through an extreme of a lust for flesh as opposed to a lust for sexuality, and it kind of equates the two. But I just think it's a really great example of a woman looking at the horror film genre and turning that on its head. It's a really great look at a non-traditional coming of age story, and you should totally watch it. I will say I'm a very grossed out person. I had to stop it took me three viewings to finish the film because it's so gross at certain parts. Yeah. But so just know that going in.
Usually I try and just muscle it out. I
just kind of sit there I almost vomited at least twice.
And I push. Well, it reminds me of one that I saw. There's another movie kind of about cannibalism. It's older. I think it's around maybe Civil War time. It's called Ravenous. Have you heard of this?
I've heard of it.
Ravenous is another one where you got kind of all these guys, soldiers and such different types, get locked up in this cabin. They get snowed in.
Oof.
And then
it's like a Donner Party thing.
And then kind of one by one, people are getting eaten. Oof. And you find out that these guys, they start to develop the taste for human flesh, and it gets very wild. But it takes it more of in a psychotic direction, whereas a sexualized direction, because there's no females in there or anything. Yeah. It's just all guys that are snowed in at a cabin, and you're just
kind of it's super desexualized. It kind of sounds like.
There's nothing like that. It's more of a psychotic piece of what goes through the how is someone driven to consuming another individual, what means would have to come about, and then even more so if you do it for survival. When is it beyond survival and it becomes necessity? Not so much pleasure, but just necessity. Raw
and Ravenous. Yeah, Raw is it's an excellent film. It's so good. But
this is kind of neat because this
final one. I've not seen this yet.
Yorgos Lanthimos, again, who makes The Lobster and then takes a complete turn with The Killing of a Sacred Deer. This movie's about 2 years old now. Colin Farrell's in this one. I will tell you right now, you got to prepare yourself
really?
before you watch this one, because some of the shit that happens,
it's crazy.
it is deeply disturbing. It's very disturbing.
We'll like get on the phone, Nick. We'll be like, okay, we're gonna start. You're gonna watch Piano Teacher. I'll watch The Killing of a Sacred Deer. We'll come back together.
And it's so awful. Specific when you get to the end, the final, the kind of like the penultimate scene before they go and meet this young man in a diner is extremely disturbing. But essentially, what happens is, Colin Farrell is a surgeon, and he was on call, and it turned out that he was drunk, and he ended up killing.
Oh my God,
he ended
his
up.
patient?
Yeah, his patient was this kid's dad, and he ends up this kid's dad ends up dying. Well, after that happens, this young man starts to take us on this insane. Absolute loss of his psyche. It's very deep. It's very disturbing. But you have this young man who is now just giving Colin Farrell orders about what to do, how things have to be carried out, so that he can have some sort of, in order to have penance or to be forgiven for Colin Farrell killing his father. And he holds him completely responsible, but he does really crooked things, like he invites him over, and this kid invites Colin Farrell, and Colin Farrell is married to Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
He has 2 children. This young man, our protagonist, will invite Colin Farrell over and try and get him set up with the kid's mom. And the kid doesn't care that he's married or anything. He's like, I just want my mom to be happy. So that's a little bit of a dynamic. But then it gets in deeper further. He tells Colin Farrell, like, you have to kill one of your family members. And so this kid starts going, either you make the decision or I'm going to make the decision for you. And then he gets to a point to where he starts poisoning
my God.
Colin Farrell's children. They can't walk anymore. All of a sudden it just starts happening, and so now they're at home, they're bedridden, and so it comes to this scene before the final scene where Colin Farrell's in the living room, and his wife is sitting on the couch, his little boy is sitting on a chair, and his daughter's sitting on another chair, and they all have bags over their heads, and Colin Farrell has a gun, and everybody pulls the bags down, and he spins in a circle and stops and pulls the trigger. And then raises the bag up to see if he hit anyone, and if he didn't, he puts it back down and keeps turning around again. And this is how he figures out which family member dies.
I gotta say though,
and then we get to the final scene where they're in a diner, very much kind of like End of Soprano style, and Colin Farrell, his wife, and one of their children, because I'm not going to give it away, are sitting there, and the young man comes in to verify that someone's dead.
Jesus.
And it's very, very deep, very gripping. I know when I was watching it, I was like, fuck this, I would murder this kid.
Well,
I'm like, the second he started causing these problems, I'm like, I would find a way for this kid to go. But it drives so deep, and this kid has no emotion. He's absolutely emotionless. He's damn near like a sociopath. I mean, there's nothing there. And the way he says things is with total conviction of either this is normalcy or things are going to escalate. So Colin Farrell has no choice but to fall in line.
Okay, I'm going to cut in here. This is a film we didn't talk about. On this episode, we talked about it before. If you've seen Killing of a Sacred Deer and you really like it or you're intrigued by it, I would highly encourage you to watch Funny Games.
Yeah.
Funny Games, like, I would be shocked if he did not pull that formula from Funny Games, because that sounds like exactly, like, Nick, you should totally watch Funny Games. You would love it.
When you were talking about it last time,
that imagery too, everybody with the bags on their heads.
Yeah, as you were talking about it last time, it was popping into my head. I'm like, this is a lot like Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I'm just saying, the Killing of a Sacred, it's very. Dang. It is going to take you on a psychotic journey that is going to disturb you. Wow. It is one of those films that kind of grabs you from the inside, makes you completely uncomfortable as you're watching it, and the emotion you have toward the end is all this is going down. You're just kind of going, dear God, what the hell's going on? So it's impressive. So yeah, unfortunately, we kind of ended on a dark note, but I just have to give it to him just because of the story, and if you can get through it and just appreciate the film for what it accomplished. It's totally worth a watch. But
sounds excellent.
I think that's fun. That's good for some European craft.
Movies, which we could always do another one if you guys are interested. But
yeah.
What are we talking next week, Nick? You're kind of the leader of next week's
I know. Next
episode.
week, I said it would be fun to talk about sport films.
yeah.
And when we originally came up with the concept, I was talking about, let's just talk about stuff that makes us laugh and cry. But then I was like, man, there's more that sport films do, because I think that what they do when they discuss the era that they're in, and we also find with sport films we get into a lot more documentary style or real life portrayals, or something that comes from a true story.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why we'll be talking about stuff that makes us laugh, it makes us think, makes us feel good at the end, and then sometimes there are other ones that make us feel good and so good that we cry, so.
Yeah.
And I know that there will be like one or two films that I will struggle to get through just because they mean so much to me emotionally, but I love what they do at the end. They accomplish something that many directors struggle to accomplish. But yeah, and it's a gamut. Like, we'll be ripping through them quick. Some we've talked about in the past, and we'll just name them and move on. But yeah, it'll be fun to get into it and talk some sports.
Talk sports.
Talk sports.
I love sports.
No, you don't.
I was, how dare you? I was a
Here it
baseball
comes.
girl.
Is this your baseball softball story?
Yeah, I was a baseball girl who was fucking
Here
kicked
we
out
go.
for having a vagina, and of
Oh,
course
God,
you have a
here we go.
vagina, so you can't hold a little ball and throw it around.
Yeah, if you start dating again, you'll have two little balls to throw around. That's all you need. But I think it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to next week. It'll kind of be. It's not going to be as lengthy as like our 80s, 90s shows, but we're definitely going to be ripping through some films.
It'll be good. But yes, bye everyone. Just
Later.
remember, be a shark.
And find us. Find us on all those social media spots that
Be a
you know.
shark and find
Yeah,
us.
be a shark. Find us. Where do we go?
Find us on Instagram, Twitter,
Yeah.
Facebook. Listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and Google.
And don't forget YouTube.
The
one that
YouTube,
Nick has.
Please.
The one that
where
Nick
you
has.
can see physically
I promise,
how many
if-
people are and aren't watching.
I promise, if we go big and we end up getting sponsors, I will have a Twitter and I will have an email where maybe
Nick at
like
gentlemanforsales.com.
so that people can start emailing me and just be like, please shut the fuck up and stop doing a podcast.
Get out of here.
And I'd be like, okay, I get it. Thanks. That's how it'll go.
Oh my god. But okay, bye everyone.